What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Yala, your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about the hottest news with a touch of what, Terrence?
Good old humor.
Good old humor, man.
Yeah.
And while we talk a lot about news, we also talk a lot with people about news and other things.
Yeah.
And today is one of those episodes.
Yeah. People in the news and people who make news.
Who
right?
make news,
Yeah.
Because in the studio, we have for the first time Irfan Kasban, who is a multidisciplinary artist who has done a whole lot of cool shit, and we're going to talk a lot about that. So, welcome, Irfan.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
I'm here.
You're here. What did you hear about our podcast before coming on from the person who referred you to us?
Okay, so the person who referred me was Jo Tan, and she told me, "Oh, okay, just to take note, it's a layman."
I love the description, layman.
Layman.
And I'm like, okay, cool, I can deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't like going intellectual as well.
Oh, really?
You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been on like interviews or podcasts that are very intellectual?
Not yet. Not at the moment. The only other one that I did was for SG Boys. And that was quite chill as well. Yeah.
I see. So what's an intellectual podcast to you? Like,
when we discuss our existence and the ephemerality of our lives.
dude, that's what we're
is
going to
so
be.
hard.
That's what we're going to be talking about today, man.
That's our layman topic of the
That's
day.
our agenda. Before this, I was telling Terrence, I think we need to talk about
Ephemerality.
ephemerality. Correct, ephemerality.
But actually, just now, did Harish's description capture what you're up to and what's the biggest thing that you're doing today or these days, lah?
These days, quite, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just a bit of background about myself. I'm a person
Yeah.
who lives in Tampines, who studied science, but had an affinity to the arts. Started with dance, did DK Barat, started writing lyrics, and then did theatre. And I find connections with experiences that don't normally correlate with each other. So after like starting theatre in like 2006, I moved on to film and then visual arts. So I kind of get bored really easily. So in a year, I'll probably do like a different project every few months. Yeah.
But you studied science.
Yes, applied food science and nutrition from Temasek Polytechnic.
Okay. Then when did you realize you started to have like an artist inclination?
I think when I was really young, but my mom forced me to go and do science because she thought it was going to be like, you know, the moneymaker. And I'm like, I understand you worry about my future, but then there's this part of me that boils in me, you know, and it just needs to express itself. Yeah.
So right now, we know you are directing Joe's upcoming play, King. And we can talk about that in a bit. But you mentioned also that you have gone into film and TV, visual arts and music.
Yes.
And what sort of projects are you working on in there?
Okay, so there's a film that I acted in maybe 2 years ago. We just got accepted to a film festival. I can't say actually what film festival, but yay! And I started acting actually just to understand as a director how my actors feel, and then it became this like natural progression of like, oh my god, this is how their inner brain works. You know what issues they go through trying to become a character. And then naturally it just became its own beast lah. I kind of got addicted to acting a bit because it's a chance for you to look at your traumas or look at what resistance you might have or what preconceived notions of yourself do you have. So it was always about breaking who you are or discovering who you are or who you can be. Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, you say like discovering who you can be. Like the reason why Joe actually referred us to you was because we were talking with Joe about the issue of gender and pronouns. And I remember telling her like, okay, is there anyone you know who can come talk to us? Because as much as I try to read up about it, try to understand it, I'm admittedly still like wrapping my head around it. And she said, okay, you have to talk to Irfan. And then after that, probably she messaged you like, hey, Irfan, you're going to talk to some layman.
And that also has to do. Yeah, I mean, it also
Yeah.
has to do with King, right?
Yeah.
The upcoming theatre production.
Correct.
There is that. It deals with themes of gender identity as well. and
Yes.
all, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's relevant for that. Joe wanted us to talk to you, lah.
Yeah. So like promoting the film, the play, but also helping us understand this whole thing that, I mean, a lot of people talk about, even like you see interviews, you read newspaper articles and all, but it's very one-sided lah. And it almost feels that in this day and age, there are questions that I have that I feel if I ask, it might come across as very
Layman.
and I don't even know who to ask. I don't even know who to ask. So like, is this something that you speak about quite? I know you were in that the series People Like Us, which went on for 3 seasons.
Oh, we just ended filming for this 3rd season. So the 3rd season comes out in December. Yeah.
I see. And that is set in the world of the LGBTQ community.
Correct. Mostly gay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were one of the lead actors.
Correct.
I see.
Yeah. And I play an accountant.
Okay.
Accountant who's in the closet. So that is something that, it's not me as well, but it was interesting to embark on. Yeah.
And is this topic something that you speak publicly a lot about?
I don't. So I'm here as more of like a director. In that I think gender identity is something that is individual, and it's how we choose, or one, to be chosen, to be perceived or acknowledged. I think at the end of the day, people just want to be seen and heard, and gender is one of those things which is interesting, because who sets the boundaries? Who sets the rules? Who defines what a man is? Is there a book somewhere that says that that a man can't wear dresses? I don't know. Yeah. So going back to also the play, it has been a really interesting journey, because the play is about Jo, who plays this office lady, and she goes to her company D&D, and then she wants to be a bit more adventurous, so she dresses up as a K-pop guy, and she discovers that people treat her with a bit more respect. So then she plays on this male archetype,
Yeah.
and then with that, then she meets all these other male characters, and she realizes the true essence of what being a man is, inability to express your emotions, dismissiveness, or gaslighting, or like there's so much that is more complicated than just, a man is a man, Yeah. I don't know. How do you guys define what being a man is,
Yeah, I mean, for me, like what I guess we grew up with genitalia, or like the reproductive organs. To me, that is like okay, what I've always understood to be a man, but now I'm also thinking, okay, it seems like there's an updated definition, or there's new definitions. And I mean, I do feel certain times like, but how can it be? I mean, I studied engineering. So, and even though I'm in the creative world now, I still find a lot of my thinking is like, okay, there's like tangible stuff. Then when it gets abstract and like big gray, right, that's when I get confused. Yeah, that's when I have trouble dealing. And Terrence will vouch for this, and that whole gray scale, I'm like, oh shit, how? But I also know that it is something that cannot just be written off, lah.
Yeah.
So I would like to understand, which right now I feel I don't. So that's my starting point, my definition of what a man is.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I know that there's the biological sexes, right? Whether male, female. But then there's gender as well, which is more closely tied to what you identify with, and sexuality, like what what you're attracted to. How those three overlap and interact is, I think, it's a subject of a lot of debate and discussion now, right? But I guess for me the big thing is when these things and they are happening even in Singapore, right? They're coming to in the workplace and all that, when talking about things like pronouns, for example. In schools, I think even in some tech companies, that they are expected to use pronouns, or at least expressive pronouns. So admittedly, for dinosaurs like us, and we thought people like us, dinosaurs like us. We're like
That's our
laymen like us.
laymen like us. Yeah.
layman like us.
Trying to wrap our head around it, lah. And I have a lot of friends, even family and all from the LGBTQ community. So to me, it's important that we are, and people like me understand these things better as well before we try to talk about them with any kind of like authority or anything like that, lah. Like on the podcast and all. So that's why we're like, okay, we want to talk about the play, of course. But we also need to ask some very layman questions.
No, please go ahead. Yeah. And I just also want to put a disclaimer that I'm not the expert in gender, but I will share what I know.
Sure. Yeah.
And I hope it can open up a bit of interpretation.
Yeah. So like, I mean, you asked us like the definition of a man. Like, what has your definition of a man been, and what is it now, or has it changed over the years?
I think so. I think one of the first few men we would have encountered would be our father. So to look at what your childhood perception of your father is a start, Is that how you define what masculinity is, My father listened to music, he played instruments, he was not very expressive about how he felt, and how he expressed emotions usually was through anger. And I observed that firsthand. And so it's interesting as I grew up to look at then how do I forgive this person who beat me up when I was a child, And as I investigated, it seems that the idea of a man is more complicated because of what society puts on him, You get married to this woman. You're expected to be the breadwinner. You're expected to take charge of household things. So like my definition of man is always constantly changing. Meeting you guys, as well is going to be one of my. I'll put inside my folder, my FBI folders. I think. The best way I can help you guys with this is that look at everyone with special needs. As in like look at everyone as if they have special needs. Everyone is different. Okay. Everyone has a different father. Everyone has a different encounter with what masculinity or femininity is. And yes, you're right. We are born with one or the other organ, and some of us too, if you're intersex, and then you grow up, you realize you like or you have an affinity with a particular gender. What does that entail? That's another exploration altogether. And it's harder for queer people because it's not something that appears in media. It's not something that is inherently institutionalized. Like we have to fight for it, and so there's a lot of doubt as well.
So then you identify as?
I identify as queer, non-binary, but it's hard for me to get here because I think a few years ago when I discovered I'm comfortable with being non-binary, I realized that non-binary is a binary as well, and it's just me submitting to language, I mean, all these labels essentially are the fault of language, I think, like in Malay, there's no he or she, there is just dear, So when I tell people what are my pronouns, I go, oh, I'm dear and dear, like, hey dear, So we have to look at what systems have we been brought up with and how it does not help us, and also respect how other people want to be identified with, Yeah.
So just now you mentioned that you observe your dad's behavior, right? And you said your understanding of what a man is. It's still, the example you're giving was more like behavioral. Can't express emotions or like that. That's at least what I got out of that.
Yeah.
So is there, like just now Terrence mentioned, there is gender, then there is sex. And sometimes, like at least what I understand is sometimes there's an overlap. Sometimes people say they are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Okay, so there's this really interesting artist that distilled a vial of testosterone and distilled a vial of estrogen, and then she put it on the canvas, and she also put it with melanin, and then the work basically asks you, is this how you define yourself? Are you your biochemistry? It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Are you limiting yourself by the notions that this is biological? Like if we look at even further, right? At the end of the day, we're just protons, neutrons, and electrons. We're just dust in space. Yeah, not to go all nebulous, but like, yeah. I don't know whether I forgot the question also.
Like
I went so far into space. I forgot the question. Sorry.
I mean, where I started was like the issue of gender and biological sex.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know some people, they equate it, some people totally differentiate it, and I was asking like, how do you kind of understand both things and how they relate?
Okay. I think for myself, I was born male.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, I have an affinity to men. So does that make me gay? And then in my 20s, I went to gay clubs and I was like, these are not my people lah. Yeah lah, I don't like go circuit clubs. I don't like going circuit parties or like what is gay actually? It's so big, it's so broad. Is it just liking guys or so I think gender is and should be fluid. It can change. You should allow it to change if you're open enough for it. In that, you also have to realize that it's not the one thing that defines you. Especially in this day and age, I feel my argument is always overpopulation. There's no need to procreate. So who am I? What am I doing here on this earth? And my answer to that is I'm here to observe the beauty that presents itself to me, whatever form that might be. And with that, sometimes it's about not limiting myself to, I only like men, or, I am just a man because I have a dick, Yeah, I like my dick, but like, I'm sure there's more to it, right? Yeah.
Your dick doesn't define you.
Yeah. Yeah. but it also does in some way, like how, a vagina doesn't define a woman for being a woman. It's just, how she chooses to express herself might be very different from what we imagine sex to be, And I think when we talk about gender, sometimes people just go into sex, and it's not about that, It's not about who you're having sex with. It's not that, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
So that means, like just now, you said you identify as queer and non-binary. But if someone were to tell you, okay, so you're queer, but you're born a male, is that something that is, or born a man? Is that something that is still acceptable for you, or do you think that kind of totally defeats what you identify with?
For me, it's okay.
It's okay, but there are. Sorry, go ahead.
No, carry on.
But there are people who might reject that, right?
I don't think people will reject the idea of born.
Okay.
Yeah, I think usually assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth.
Yeah.
And then gender is a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Gender is what comes after.
Okay.
Gender identity is exclusive from the organs that you have. Yeah. So you in some cultures they believe it's like spiritual. So you might be assigned a dick, for example, and feel more attuned to the female psyche.
To the female.
Yeah. and therefore that's why they go through like hormonal replacement therapy and they're just trying to find their truest self or be their truest self, whatever that means. Because even as a straight male, okay, you tell me I am straight, I am a man. But can I ask you why you think you are a straight man? You know?
Why I'm a straight male?
Yeah.
Because I'm attracted to women.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything
Apart from
else?
that,
Yeah.
I also have a dick. And I have an Adam's apple, or
Okay.
visible Adam's apple.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So more like stuff that I can see and touch and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's where it ends.
Yeah, mainly physical.
Yeah.
Physical urges and things like liking women and having a dick. I mean, like, yeah. For example, I do find that I'm much more sentimental than a lot of my guy friends and everything.
Yeah.
But I've never used that to think about my identity, my gender identity per se.
Yeah.
I've always just thought, okay, maybe I'm just more sentimental that way, lah. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Do you think the sentimentality comes from any physical attribute?
Physical attribute.
Sentimentality.
I mean, you mean like hormonal or anything like that, lah? Is it?
Or I don't know. Yeah. Maybe hormonal.
Probably. I don't know, man. That was a tough one because I can chalk it to upbringing or how.
Okay, tell me more.
No, I mean relationships. If you're I think you talked about relationship with your father, right?
Mm-hmm.
My family was generally a very happy family, but very classic kind of family where the communication is between father and the rest of the family is not as open, lah, right? They don't openly not like nowadays. People are very open about saying I love you and hugs and all that.
Yeah. Are you a second child?
Second child, yeah.
Oh
my God.
You're psychoanalyzing us.
Yeah. So,
of course.
No, in that process of even becoming a dad myself, right? Having a child and all, you square off a lot of things about how you were brought up. And it might not have been perfect or it might not have even been bad, but you start to see, okay, there were things that how you were brought up that kind of explain why you feel this way about certain things and why maybe in your life you've overcompensated in certain ways, like being very sentimental about certain things. Maybe it's because human relationships to me is like you have to do a lot to try and get like approval or liking, right? So yeah, if you ask me like how that manifested, maybe that's one way that I would have psychoanalyzed my own past.
Yeah. I think one of my other hypotheses is that I was assigned male at birth, but in the 9 months I was in my mother's womb, I was taking on some of her emotions or some of her experiences. Those 9 months are actually very crucial to how you perceive the world, because those would be actually some of your first few memories or senses. And there's an article that talks about how sometimes women who give birth to queer children or children who don't feel the need to or fall in love with the opposite sex is because they see a community that is lacking in resource. So there's this belief where if a mother looks at at Singapore and sees like, oh, okay, there's not enough space for my child, it's more likely that child would be queer so that there'll be more resources for her other children, for her other straight children to procreate.
Oh.
Yeah, so then you will have like lovely uncles to take care of your lovely gay uncles to take care of your children.
So it's almost evolutionary, lah.
It is, yeah. I believe so. I mean, it's not a proven thing, but it's something that makes sense for me.
Damn.
Yeah.
Bro, then the BTO prices, all the mothers now, they must be thinking, Housing prices all
Yeah.
over house. Yeah.
You're just going to bring more queer children here, guys. I mean, already you look at Singapore and you're like, there's not space. There's not enough space,
Yeah.
you know? And you wonder why there are queer people around. And like, because, you know, resources, as much as we're a rich country, it really, sometimes you look and you see like, yeah, there's no need for me to procreate, you know. I am second of 6 children, guys.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
5 boys.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, yeah, and the other thing also, like going back to like the pregnancy, I asked my mom, like, because I feel like I was put here to like protect her. So I asked her, like, did you have a fight with dad while you were pregnant with me? And she said yes. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I believe that, you know, that's how what you are assigned with and how your emotional development and gender identity develops becomes a separate thing altogether, you know?
I see.
It's almost like you are you're made as I don't know if this is layman enough and if this makes sense, but if you're made as a Honda car, but then you want to be a Subaru, be a Subaru. I don't know.
But how you're talking about Singapore in general, right? How receptive do you think Singapore is today, you know, compared to back then about issues of gender identity and people being more open about different, you know, identifying differently from their assigned gender?
I think there's more room. I don't know if it's tolerance or it's let me close one eye, you know. You take away 377A and then you put this other thing about families, and then you inherently, I don't know, you put queer people in a weird position, you know, and single people as well, and I don't know.
You say weird because I mean, to a lot of people it's like, okay, you repealed 377A already,
Yeah.
so it's no longer illegal,
Yeah.
to be, you know, queer or gay or anything. So like what I mean, then what's wrong with trying to enshrine marriage as an institution between men and women?
I don't have a problem with it because I can't see myself getting married, but there are some queer people who want to get married. But it's just almost like okay, let me give you something, but like, okay, here's another thing you cannot do. You know, like, okay, got it.
But how do you feel?
Way to make us feel welcomed. Yeah, we're not criminals now, but like you can't
get married,
you can't be yourself here fully. Yeah.
But how do you feel when the response to that is that that's the reason why they moved the definition of marriage to Parliament, so that if you want the definition to be changed, you vote in the leaders who want to change it. Like when you heard that, right? Was it like, okay, this is just brushing off the actual issue, or like what were your thoughts?
I'm not very politically inclined. Because okay, to be honest, I'm not politically inclined because I don't deal with Venn diagrams that are that large, like Singapore, for example. I tend to work with individuals. So if I could change the two of you today, it'll be the best thing ever, you know. And I'm not even caring about the listeners at this moment.
You know what I mean? Fine,
so it's really, for me, my work on this earth is to allow certain choice people to think differently, maybe, you know, to garner some empathy. But it's never on a large scale. I'm never going to be that kind of activist. Yeah.
But in some way as well, what you do as a director, as a, you know, filmmaker and everything, you are working within the sandbox that is also, like, you know, the regulations and IMDA guidelines about things, right?
Yeah.
So you have to those guide boxes do, and that sandbox does limit as well.
Yeah.
Entirely what you want to say. And I mean, how do you feel about there being these, you know, so-called OB markers, you know, our bounce markers in place for you in your mission to want to tell more people or talk to people on a smaller, more individual level.
Mm-hmm.
When you do it as part of play, you're talking to a smaller group, but it's still, more than one person at a time. Lah.
Yeah. So that's where my practice is really interesting. So last year I did this play called The Death of Singapore Theatre as scripted by the Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore. Oh. That's the whole title of the play by Alfian Saad. And it was really interesting. It was me tackling this like political play, and usually I don't do it, but I did it because of the actor. So I was working with Farah Ong, who I love very much. And so with my projects, I tend to start with the actor first. If I can change and find a transformation within the actor, then it will move into a transformation on that scale, on a play level. All the audiences will then be moved, and thankfully that happened. And so I think I strongly believe in creating ripples. Like small little ripples that will end up in greater waves. So yeah, when you talk about OB markers, of course there'll always be OB markers, but I'm at a point where I'm about the path of least resistance. If there's a wall, I would possibly just move away from it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's interesting.
No. I mean, I'm just trying to square what you're saying about not being political, but at the same time, the work that you do does it will come in
correct
against those boundaries and everything, right?
Because also I look at politics and I'm like, this is just ideologies fighting each other, and for what do we get the benefit of it? No, they are getting paid all the salary. We are here waiting for their every word, and if I could spend my energy supporting them or following that, but I believe that there are other things I could do, to make a change. Yeah.
So, but do you think in general politics and policies is still important? It's just that it's not where you can spend. Is not where you choose to focus in terms of how much impact you can have.
Important. I think it can be, but I'm quite jaded about that. You look at Singapore's. Oh no, am I going to get in trouble?
No, don't worry. We've said a lot of stuff on this podcast.
We've not touched the markers yet. We've not touched the markers.
So what happens within, from my experience, what happens within government agencies or okay, let's talk about National Arts Council, for example. Okay, you have scholars who study abroad and are from the military. They come in, they take on the portfolio, and then after 5 years they switch to another portfolio. So every 5 years there's a new thing that we have to do. There's a whole new report that we have to do. The whole system changes every 5 years because there's no consistency, and because all these people are just trying to climb up the ladder. And eventually they will become prime ministers not prime ministers, ministers.
Yeah.
And then when you become ministers, if you and you spend all your life climbing and garnering all these portfolios, doing things that you think are right without actually knowing the ground, I think that becomes a problem, And my personal stick about all the scandals, I'm like, why not? It's the most human thing that we've seen so far from all these ministers. They are in love. Let them be. I know you think what about their marriage? What about their marriage? What if it's a loveless marriage? What a poor thing.
Yeah.
So you looked at it as in some way I agree. It's showing them as imperfect humans.
Correct. I mean, I would really want people who are broken to represent us. I don't need someone who knows how to wear a crisp white shirt to represent me. I really want someone who has queued up in the clinic for so long after defeating cancer or something. We need this kind of people because they understand how it feels to almost be forgotten. I want a senior citizen who had to collect cardboards to represent us. What would that person say for us? Isn't he part of the country as much as us? He or she or they.
Yeah.
But where does that empathy come from, given that some of the politicians involved in the scandals were were championing things that are, about the nuclear family unit, like the definition of marriage is man, woman.
Oh, it's interesting. I can divorce myself from that, I think when I look at someone who champions nuclear families, that's how they were raised, That's what they think safety is, I don't look at it as, oh, that he is against me. It's a really popular belief that might put me in danger only if I allow it to, Yes, you can have your nuclear families, sure, but do you understand that all families are psychotic? That's a book, by the way. Yeah.
That is true.
All families have their own mess, and if that's something that you want to fight for, which is a nuclear family, sure, go ahead. But you have to also acknowledge that is as dangerous as a queer family. But at least a queer family is chosen, You allow yourself to talk and express yourself. But okay lah, some queer settings also are not very healthy also, Yeah. So I look at the world as everything has its pros and everything has its cons, Yeah.
Do you ever get pushback from members of the LGBTQ community who say that, you have a profile and, you're visible and everything.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a firmer stand, against whether it's the politics or the just be a bit more of an activist for these issues lah. Do you ever get a pushback?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't know. It's very tough. Yeah. It's very tough because I do want to align myself with greater goods, but sometimes I find certain notions not to be something that I can support. Please don't hate me, all the queer people out there. But sometimes I look at Pink Dot and I'm like, why? But I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that it's the first and only way that we can be political about our gender identity.
Yeah.
But also as a person, as Irfan, I have stopped going.
Okay.
Only because I think that my slot there can be used for other people who believe in the cause. I am doing other things. I am. We started. With a bunch of friends, we started this queer party called Intervention because we were really we wanted to hear good music in a queer setting, because usually queer settings they play like Top 40, Kylie Minogue, and then I want to play Bjork, I want to play all this like weird electronic music, and that's when me and one of the other members, we started arguing about, then what about our responsibility to the community? And I'm like, what community? We are the community, and then because some other people were getting really upset about what, or we were taking up space or a slot that was meant for queer, and I'm like, but there's space for everyone, there's really space for everyone, like we shouldn't be gatekeeping, oh, this is queer, this is not queer, this is straight, this is not straight, let people live, really. People really just want to express this, and everyone is just lost in life, and going back to the ministers, I'm like, that kind of job, and if you really found someone that you could talk to at night, why not? You can hold hands in a restaurant, why not? Hey, let them lah. That is the most beautiful moment of humanity, I feel. When you are allowed to hold someone's hand. I don't know whether the pressures of you being a public figure makes it even more exciting. But like let's distill that moment and realize that it was just two humans connecting, no matter what gender they were, no matter what experience they were. Why was it politicized? It's so awful.
But I think people are saying, because they are married and have family, some people were hurt lah, like personally hurt by the whole thing, husbands, wives, kids. So I mean, because I think that's something you and I talked about as well, right?
Yeah.
Like whether their personal indiscretions Whether that affects their ability to do their job was one thing, but secondly, is like, what's the big deal about it that everyone needs to that they need to quit, right? If they're just like you say in love, their marriage maybe doesn't provide them what they need.
Yeah.
Why begrudge them the chance to do it, Yeah.
But like, I mean, I can understand the pushback. Even for me, when I looked at it, I did feel that it was very hypocritical of them to preach one thing and not really practice what they preach. But I also know that people are not perfect. People make mistakes.
People are contradictions.
Yeah, people are contradictions.
And people evolve all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that like caused a lot of that sort of observation, my hypothesis or my belief is that it's because, okay, right now society, there is a structure. Not to say the structure is right, not to say the structure is wrong. But like with this whole discussion around gender and pronouns, it is something new. And I think sometimes there's a lot of clash between existing structures, existing beliefs, and what this new way of thinking, this new belief that maybe it's coming to light more. And I think a lot of people maybe feel a little like that, like no one likes change, right? So from your view, like what is the society that we aspire towards? Like I know you yourself earlier said you don't intend to get married, but
maybe it will change,
Maybe it will change. Maybe it will change.
Like when I meet someone I like, I will like, I really want to marry you, and then divorce you and then marry you again.
That one sounds like a preference, bro.
Sounds a romantic comedy.
I mean, divorce is such a big thing also. Anyway, okay, carry on.
So I mean, where I was going was that because like I think in some way, do you think that the way it is being approached now can be almost a bit too how you say
rigid?
Like very head-on clashing. Like because okay, for example, the pronouns thing. Like I know some companies they mandate that you use pronouns in your email signature. And on LinkedIn, it's almost become like a flex. And sometimes I'm thinking, okay, do people really genuinely believe it? Is this necessary, or do we need to like really explore the extremes before we all settle in the middle that everyone's happy with? And like because right now, it like with any movement, right, any form of activism, sometimes you can believe in it, but when it goes to an extreme, then you lose sight of like is this really the best thing? So like for politics, like the left sometimes, especially in the US, and even Singapore, sometimes they go so extreme where I would consider myself liberal, but I look at it, I'm like, hey guys, what the fuck are you all doing? So when it comes to these sort of issues, do you feel that, or like how do you make sense of like the general conversations, which to me feel like everything is a fight? Everything is there's no middle ground yet.
To quote the play No Homo, and homo here refers to homogeny. So if I could give you an example, there was this linguist who mentioned that if we were all in the world to start off with one language, these languages will in 5 years or in less break away from the uniformity of language. And that's the beauty of humanity. We all have different experiences and different perspectives, and then people will alter these languages to suit their own body or their own geography or their own societies. So going back to that, right, I think people can fight for what their pronouns want to be, or address it or put it in their emails. But I think it's at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide whether you want to respect them or not. And it's okay either way. Like you are allowed to tell, I'm so sorry, I'm still learning. I'm not sure how to navigate this. For me personally, I don't know whether pronouns define me well enough. I feel more sometimes like an animal, like a dragon maybe, or like a tiger. Do I want people to call me a tiger? Not really. I mean, this is some of the arguments that people are also bringing up
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
from the straight camp, like, oh, I identify as a kettle, so please call me a kettle. It's not that, you see. It's someone telling you, could you please refer to me as he or she, or they, them, you know, and it's someone reaching out to you in saying that this is how I want to be acknowledged. And it's up to you if you want to acknowledge that, you know. And if you don't, then you're an asshole. No, and then also back to that whole like idea of what future I imagine. If I could share a bit, I'm seeing someone in an open relationship, and it's really interesting because he just got married, and it opened up a lot of questions for me. You know, this is a really good book called The Ethical Slut about how polyamory and polyamorousness exist within society, and it should be quite natural. I don't think I'm for polyamory, but I don't know what monogamy is as well, you know? So it's a definition that I'm still learning. And what I learn is that you cannot expect one person to fulfill all your needs, your emotional, your sexual, your it's not fair, you know? And I think that's why sometimes marriages don't work, because you rely on this person to be a psychiatrist, to be your friend, to be your partner, you know. And it's so much responsibility, because people tend to want to grow or not, you know. Some people like change and some people don't. And in my case, I like to grow, and that means being fluid with my gender identity, you know, and not defining it, and therefore non-binary, you know. Yeah.
But just going back to what you were mentioning just now about, you know, when people say, "Can you please refer to me as a certain pronoun or something?" Then the other side would be an asshole by saying no, right? I can't. But I think that comes to a clash a lot when institutions or what try to say, hey, you got to start referring to people by certain pronouns and all that. So say, I mean, you know, the examples of schools, for example, universities, where a professor can get fired for not referring to a student's pronouns properly. Like in those instances, you could even say that people are being forced to, you know, use those pronouns. Like that in that situation, like who is being the asshole, right?
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Who do you think is forcing who?
I like the institutions laying down like rules saying that, you know, faculty need to refer to students by their pronouns.
Their chosen pronouns.
Yeah. So it's not even a choice for the professor or what anymore.
But wouldn't that be almost similar to my name is Irfan? I would like to be referred to as Irfan. You know, even though I might look like a Rizwan, you know, yeah. How about that? You know, like how about that's how I want to be referred as then. I mean, if it's official, then I think, yeah, look at it as a name lah, as a yeah, because when you're saying no to identifying, for example, someone who is assigned female at birth, or presents as female, and she wants to be referred to as they, them, then you are actually the limitation is on you, because you assume that because the media projects this female figure as a woman, and therefore she has to be she, her, you know. So what if we looked at it as names then, you know, like she just wants to be referred as they, them, you know. Sorry, they want to be referred as they, them, you know. So it's kind of like a name, you know. It's like when I introduce myself, I'm Irfan, you can call me Fanny, you know. It's how I want to be perceived, and if it's official, I think, yeah, why not?
But the difference between the names and, let's say, your pronouns or your gender is that some of that trickles down to the more logistical things, like, let's say, restrooms. Or even, I know in sports competitions, you know, depending on who you identify should you take part in which competition.
Yeah.
I think recently there was a case in one country in Europe, I believe it was Scotland, where there was a male rapist who identified as who was undergoing gender reassignment but not fully complete, and he was put in a female prison. And there was a lot of pushback against that. So for me as a layperson looking at it, okay, a name, it's almost like it doesn't impact things like that affect life.
I see.
Yeah. So how should one open their mind to think about that? Because it does cause ripples, right? It does cause impact.
Yeah. I would use the handicap toilet. It's the one gender neutral toilet, actually. You know, like who decided that men and women should have separate toilets? You know, maybe male toilets would be much more cleaner if women were in there as well.
Actually, I don't know, man, bro. Like
vice versa.
Actually, I don't know.
Women
Yeah. I mean, but some of the, like, you know, like at theatre works where we're rehearsing, the toilets are gender neutral, like, you know, and then then we have to question why the division, you know, why were toilets created for male and female? You know, it's essentially an act that we all have to do. You know, go to the toilet. So when did things become secular? Is that the word? No, I don't know. Divisive. You know. You know. When did I was also reading this article this morning about how this sprint track and field runner who naturally has more testosterone because she was born with it cannot compete for 4 years, and you're like and then their reasoning was because she has a male advantage, and I'm like, but she's a woman. I think, but also why? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. Why are we competing? That's my question. Like, for what? Why do I want to see you run? Okay lah, you're fast. Okay, good lah. You know, it doesn't make sense to me that people are running or competing. Actually,
but then what if a runner says, Irfan, why you want to tell these stories in a theater?
I don't know. I'll tell them straight that I don't know. I'm finding myself. Yeah. So do you think a runner would say that?
I can imagine that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
okay.
because I mean,
I'll be friends with them then.
Yeah, because I know for sports, especially elite level sports, I can totally understand. Like, it's almost like a spiritual thing to them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, if you speak to some of the more, or if you read articles about some of the more religious footballers, they're almost like, God has given me this talent, and it would be a sin to not share it with the world.
Beautiful.
You know, so but then on the note of sports, where, and then now it becomes a bit more of the tech, the things, the physical aspects of someone who's born male. So you know, you gave the example just now, is a female runner who just happens to have a lot of testosterone. But if it's a male athlete that now identifies as female, or is undergoing gender reassignment, should they be allowed to compete in female sports? And I think one thing that caused a lot of controversy was in the US, there was this male swimmer who was like not like considered average, and then he underwent I think gender reassignment, or I'm not fully sure, but he started competing in the females and he broke all the records. So then it becomes a thing, there's one thing about respecting how people identify themselves, but when it comes down to things like this, how?
Interesting. Yeah. You stumped me here, because one is I don't believe in competition. But I understand how some people believe that that's the way that they find their true self and the true spirit. And I guess the play is different because I'm not competing with anything except for time. Interesting. I don't know. I really don't know. I think that's an argument that we can really get into. Yeah, because my question is why? Yeah, why? I don't understand.
But speaking about the play, right? I think one of the reasons why we also wanted to chat also, because we watched Jo's previous play, the last play she put up, and it came from a very personal experience.
Is this the one at NUS?
No, the one that was at
what was it called again?
Gateway. The one
Gateway,
about the
Happy
radio.
Place,
radio,
Happy Place, yeah,
Happy Place, yes, Happy Place, yeah, it was great. And we had her on a podcast, and she talked about the very personal experience of like being a radio DJ and how it actually affected her and all that. And that's why this play, I mean, that was the fruit of that experience. So for and people, a lot of people who said it after, who watched the play and then listened to our podcast also, they found it like, it's like almost companion pieces to understand really what went on in the playwright's head. So for you, what was the inspiration or the genesis of being involved in and directing this production?
Oh, okay. I think one of the things was that I was also interested in performing gender. How does we see a lot of like drag queens, but we don't see a lot of drag kings. So it was interesting when I got the script and it was this mousy little female office worker who decides to be a drag king and the presentation is this like misogynist being motherfucker who like who just says whatever he wants, and so it's a part of this other character Yen that she cannot express. So as a man, then she's allowed to do it, but and I went into the process. So we started, I think, 6 months ago with workshops. I started the process with not knowing, and I think that's okay to not know as well. If I could put a disclaimer about gender or things, I didn't know where it was going to go, and only last Friday did we realize that it was a play about performing all aspects of masculinity, even fragile masculinity. So it became like a really beautiful work. After doing so many times and then tweaking and calibrating it,
And what happened last Friday?
We saw everything in place, and we saw all the male characters that Joe is performing in a really beautiful place where it's not a stereotypical archetype. Like a man is more complicated than just, hey man, what's up? It's not like we saw all the whole spectrum, not the whole, maybe a portion of the spectrum of what a man could be, or a man could fall under. And then it became exciting because it exists through the lens of a woman. So I was like, wow. So then things became really blurred and really beautiful.
And like I know before this podcast you were telling us that the first iteration of the play was digital over COVID. Right. And it did very well. It won best script, best actress. And now you mentioned that as you're bringing it to a real life play, it has changed a lot. In what way?
So the original digital performance, I think they concentrated more about the feminism side. While I'm more interested in performing gender. Even in the context of, so there's one character in the play called Jezebel. So she's a hyper feminine character. So she's your JJ from The Office, who's very sexual and is all about breast. But then we realize that she also like performs that, so that's her power play. So when we go back to ourselves, we're like, who am I performing my gender for? Am I performing my gender to find the right mate? Am I performing a gender to absolve some of the traumas I may have? For me, that's the case. I think I think I have an affinity with men because I had a distant father. So that does affect me a bit. In when I imagine someone who I want to hold, it would be someone who happens to be a man. Like gender takes into account so many other things, memories, physiology. What sense you might be attracted to, and why. Some things beyond our control, really. And one conversation I had with another person was that is it nature or nurture? And we think it's both. You know, it's both. It's nature. You were assigned something, and then you were nurtured to believe another thing. You know, and because you were a child, you could not control it, or essentially it was not in your power to decide that I will like women. You know, like because for me, I don't not like women, but like I have something to explore with a man. Yeah.
So you mentioned performing gender. Like what do you mean performing? Is it like a role that, or the theme of the play, it is gender at its heart? Or is performing gender something?
Performing gender. Yeah. So it's Joe Tan taking on 9 characters. Some of these characters are your average Joe. You know, he's a Joe, and then there's an Abing inside also, and he's awful. I think, you know. There's also this character who's a closeted gay man. So we see how all these characters have minute or succinct habits with their gestures, and how it translates to where they are, in what context they are. So this one character who is her boss, who is closeted at work, also has a drag show. So you know how do your gestures change from being in an office setting to a nightclub, for example? You know, so how do I perform in an MRT, in a vulnerable open space where everyone can see me? You know, and how do I perform with my loved one? How do I perform with my mom? You know, it's really important questions that I think we can think about and really understand. Is this learned, or is this something that I choose to have? You know, are we resisting any form of freedom for ourselves? You know, because our bodies are such beautiful apparatuses to experience this world. Are you limiting yourself by holding yourself up in a certain way, or are you not allowing yourself to dance as freely as you can, you know, because you're a certain gender? I don't know. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, just like with regards to the understanding of gender, I mean, we've asked you a lot of questions, but where do you think is the gap for other lay people, their own understanding of gender? Is it just the fact that it's not talked about enough amongst friends, or there's not enough documentaries or interviews or articles that provide something more objective? Or
I think start with one person, you know, start with one person, but also know that this person cannot represent the whole world, you know. Start with someone who you know is queer or identifies differently from you. It could be a woman if you're a straight man, you know, and just sit down and ask questions that will help you understand without having preconceived judgments. You know, like a question I would usually ask is, does your gender define you? You know, or what are you excited about? Or there's so many things beyond gender that also affects gender. You know, when you think about rest, or when you think about being in love, what is that image? You know, for me, it's to lay down on someone's lap and looking at the clouds. You know, I don't know if gender plays a role there. You know, it's about really understanding someone. You should be a bit sensitive, but you shouldn't also be overly sensitive, because it can appear as like, you know, I'm sorry, can I ask you something? You know, and really try to get to know someone rather than trying to get to know sexuality or gender. You know,
yeah. No, I mean, it's true. Yeah. It's well, you realize that everyone has their own plethora of experiences.
Yeah.
They stem from a lot of different things, like not necessarily your gender or whether you like men or women or whatever. You know, it comes from, you know, how your family your family relationships, your friends and everything. And those things can define people a lot more than even their gender or sexuality.
Yeah.
And then once you get to know them as humans, then the other things start to fall in place a lot more easily.
Yeah. Especially in families, you assume just because you're my mother, I don't need to know you. I've been cultivating a relationship with her. We got stuck on a jam at Causeway for 3 hours. And it was the best 3 hours ever because I got to ask her a lot of questions. I got to see her as a person, not as my mother, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for you as a parent as well sometimes, to ask your child instead of assuming that they're going to be okay or they're going to be, like get to know people, especially the ones who are you're really close to,
And as you get older, you also realize that like everyone, like what you said, family is psychotic. It really is. There's no family that's not psychotic. And everything, even when you look at people a certain way, you realize, there's probably some stuff that led to that. And yeah, it does. I think for us, especially as we move into media and writing characters for stories, you realize, you need to think about the backstory of this character. Why? Because their backstory influences how they act in a day-to-day life.
Correct.
For better or worse.
Yeah.
And yeah, just understanding. It's something that we have to remind ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's why also like with this podcast, it's always yala but, because there's always a but. There's always a but with everything.
Yeah. And a lot of things that we say actually are subtext. There's subtext of things that we're not saying. Like when I'm directing Joe, I'm like, okay, this character is saying this, but what is he not saying? That is the more important part actually. What is he? What, like there's a character that goes he's a stupid gay aqua but what actually does he want to say? Yeah.
So is that something you try to do in day-to-day life also? Like really say what you're thinking as opposed to...
Yes. I consciously try to do it. Yeah. But it gets really tiring because I'm overanalyzing everyone's what they're saying, and I'm just and I'm trying to tap into an energy where I'm trying to discover the person beyond the facades that either they have put up since school or their interactions with other people who have not been sensitive to them. Like it's quite tiring because sometimes it's easier for them to just reel back and be in that safe walled up fort. So it's really tiring to be a director because you have to observe and understand. This is how she works. This is when the trapdoor comes up. This is her. Like it's really interesting, but it's really tiring work. Yeah.
So is it a job hazard that makes you like analyze everyone?
Yes.
Like everyone you meet.
Everyone, yeah. Everyone I meet.
Like just when you told Terence, second child, is it? Second child.
Correct. I can tell. Yeah, I can usually tell. Yeah. I usually can tell. Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've spoken a lot about everything on the play. So right now the play, can you just let audiences know when and where they can find it?
Okay, so the play King is being presented at 7213 Muhammad Sultan Road. That's T-Works. And it will be playing from the 10th to the 13th of August. So just after National Day.
And where can they get tickets?
They can get tickets at PTix.
And they should search just King.
King Jotan does a wonderful job. Yeah, on Google, search that.
Okay, cool. And where can people find you? If you want to be found.
Don't find me, please. Please don't find me. No, okay. After people like us, right? It was really hard to remain anonymous, and I was like, oh no, I have to be this figure now. And they're like, tired lah. You can find me at Irfan Kasban on Instagram. I post a lot of emotional, spiritual stuff.
Nice. Yeah. And people like us, the first 2 seasons are on YouTube.
And season 3 is coming out in December.
I see.
Okay. Please don't watch it if you don't like softcore porn. it gets really racy. Yeah. But my character is quite nice.
I see.
And I found a really nice place to end it. So season 3 will be our last season. And look out for my other works. So I'm doing a children's show as well. Yeah, and I'm interested in choir traditions of indigenous groups. I basically am really interested in the concept of healing, because how I was raised, and I think that's my purpose in life. And so if you need someone to talk to, contact SOS. If they don't pick up, then contact me. Yeah. And I hope, know that someone out there is willing to listen and see you for who you really are. Yeah.
It's cool.
Awesome.
We always end with a thing called the one Shiok Thing, which is something that we tell our audience that they can go and enjoy outside of this podcast and all. So maybe we can start first to just tell you what our one Shiok things are. Then after that, we can have you tell us yours, okay?
I'm pulling up mine, so Terence, you can go first if you want.
My one Shiok thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Oh, you need to pull it up as well.
No, I think I
What is this? You guys are playing up what? The music?
Our notes.
Oh, notes.
Like anytime, like for me, like when I see something, I'm like, oh, this could be a one Shiok thing. I note it down. Because you don't want to be like, oh, without anything. And I know we put you on the spot also, but where we can avoid putting ourselves on the spot, we try.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I mean, big tennis fan. But in recent months and all, my love of the sport has waned because my favorite player, and a lot of people's favorite player, Roger Federer, retired from the game. But just watching the latest Wimbledon, where the winner, Carlos Alcaraz, where he played Djokovic in the final and beat him quite convincingly, it just brought back that feeling of joy when you find a new player that's very exciting, that plays a very offensive brand of tennis.
And got personality, right?
He's very young. He's only like 20, 21, but he just takes a little bit of everything from all the greats of the past few years, the defense, the offense, and just puts it in a very entertaining package that isn't like watching paint dry, which I felt tennis has been with the dominance of the last few years of Djokovic and all that, right? I mean, I crave that feeling of like that joy when you realize, oh, this guy is someone I can watch for many, many years, and even as I grow older. And it's exciting to watch this. Even his highlights they're really quite something. Every drop shot and everything that he plays, because tennis has been in this, because of the racket technology, players' fitness and all that. It's become this sport where people stay behind the baseline. Whatever you hit to them, they're able to just hit it back to you. And it becomes a game of who makes a mistake first.
Correct.
It's no longer about, trying to trick your opponent or, being a bit more offensive and all that. So this kid, I think he's got the best of both worlds. He knows how to do defense, but he can also do a tricky shot when he wants to.
Nice.
And that's why it's very impressive. Yeah.
That's nice.
So my one Shiok thing was something I just realized is different from what my initial one Shiok thing was, because I did watch Oppenheimer last Friday, and I loved it. I know it's gotten, I don't know how many people are as adamant about how much they love it as I am. Most people I've spoken to, it's nice. Like Terence, like it was at midnight, 12:30 a.m. I messaged him like, dude, that was fucking great.
I was like, oh, is it as good as Crazy Rich Asians?
I don't think I replied. I just asked him to fuck off. But yeah, like looking back, and I mean, it's a few days later, and I just really liked it. I think the acting was solid. The acting was amazing. The casting was on point. And I mean, the story, in some way, like I know, I spoke to some friends who said they know people who don't want to watch it because they feel it glorifies the whole creation of the atomic bomb. But to me, it showed the other side about how it's almost like a nightmare. And I thought, I really enjoyed it. And even though it's based on like certain things that happen, like the test explosion, you knew it was going to happen, but the way it still built up the tension, it didn't feel like 3 hours. It was 3 hours and I didn't feel bored at all.
Nice.
So if you're on the fence, I recommend it.
There are a lot of question marks about whether it'll even be screened in Japan, for example.
Oh yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you can imagine the trauma.
God.
That
and certain scenes might be a bit hard to listen to if you're Japanese.
It's tough, man. Yeah.
Or if you've worked with people who are survivors or have been affected by the actual blast.
I've been to the Nagasaki museum about the bomb blast.
And it's just
it's quite traumatic, lah. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
so those were our one Shiok things.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, that was quite beautiful. You guys are not laymen at all, by the way.
We'll relay that to Joe.
No, tell Joe. Hey, Joe.
Beautiful
Layman one here
conversations here.
speaking.
Beautiful conversations here, guys. Okay, my one Shiok thing is something from that I just rediscovered, which is Bjork's song "Venus as a Boy," and it talks about a really sensitive man who touches her in beautiful ways. And I don't know, just have a listen. I didn't grow up listening to Bjork, so like I only started listening to her when I was in my late 20s, 30s, 20s.
That's like what, like a couple years
10
ago?
years ago.
10 years ago. Oh, okay.
No lah, late 20s is 10 years ago.
10 years, okay.
Have a listen, while you are waking up. It might be a beautiful experience.
What's the name of the song again?
Venus as a Boy.
Venus as a Boy. Okay.
It's a really nice song to, especially if you have a crush on someone.
No, Bjork, I mean, growing up, Bjork was like, the alternative pop star.
And
right?
revolutionary as
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Dude,
Cool,
thanks
man.
so much for coming on board, man.
No problem.
And thank you for being so open about
Thank you for
asking
having me.
layman questions.
Yeah.
Layman questions.
And thank you for telling us we are not laymen, which we will go back to Joe
Let's
and
compliment.
right after this, we're like, Joe, we have graduated. We have graduated. Cool, man. But
Cool.
thanks so much, man.
No, thank you.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening.